Alright, we're back. So, this is Book 7, The Fall of Castor. And The Fall of Castor is also a collection of journal entries similar to Calvus. Castor became king of Volterra after Calvus, so this picks up right after the events where we left off, right after the events of the ending of the previous book, obviously. So Castor becomes king of Volterra after Calvus and Glora exiled themselves to Pyra, the rift plane of Pyra. So they're not even on the same planet anymore. So this collection here is also introduced to the readers by Pollux, similar to how Calvus's book was. And Pollux is Castor's younger brother, if you recall from the last video. So, Pollux writes the following in his introduction of this book. Okay, we have the timeline here first. Let's see, where are we right now? This is where we're at, right here. The events of the book we will be covering in this video covered these 2 years, right? Sorry, couldn't see. This year, right here. So it's not an ellipsis on the timeline because it's only 1 year. It's not long enough to be visible. And then after that, in the next video, we'll cover all of this. So, alright. And then this will be Book 9, the next video, or next few videos, because Book 9 will be in multiple parts. So, this is what Pollux writes, following the introduction to the book. Urkar said unto us, now that Peluvius is gone, we must crown our next king, who will lead this kingdom in wisdom. And he looked at Castor first, and he continued, saying, Castor, since you are the firstborn son of Peluvius, you shall be the one who takes the crown. Then Castor knelt, smiling, and said, Oh, thank you. This glorious news shall bring peace to my roiled and despairing soul. I'm going to do that kind of voice, be overly dramatic on purpose when I read his lines, because, well, you'll see. Where was I? For we were still mourning the loss of our father. Though I loved my father, I still took notice of his deceitful ways, and I do not hold any bitterness toward Calvus for what he did. After this, Pollux shares the last diary entry Castor wrote after he first became king and before he started writing in the official king's journal. So, this is the diary entry that Pollux puts here before concluding his introduction to the book. So this is what Castor wrote in his diary. Today I have become the king of Volterra. It is a wonderful thing, truly. However, this pain I have as part of my soul does not leave even now. Never has this sorrow within my heart been set free from its cage. I wish this desire would be fulfilled, that the longing in my heart would be satisfied. Mayhap when I am enthroned as king, maybe then shall I find love. For if I obtain great riches, and my wealth surpasses that of many others, then certainly a woman must desire me. Oh, how my heart yearns eagerly for a woman, that she would be my queen, and that I could be one with her. Will the day ever come? Well, now going into chapter 1, we can see clearly what is going to be the catalyst for the fall of Castor. So Castor begins his first journal entry into chapter 1 now by stating how he was originally going to go to Pyra, follow Calvus and Glora after they exiled themselves to Pyra. He was going to go to Pyra to kill Calvus, but he explains that he changed his mind about that because of how it would make others change their view of him. And this is in stark contrast to how his younger brother Pollux views Calvus. In chapter 1, we see Castor's main struggle and the sin which will lead to his fall to the darkness. It's lust. He calls it loneliness, quote unquote, but it really is just lust. So while Calvus experienced true loneliness before marrying Glora, and then it was gone when he married Glora, Castor has a sinful lust towards women and desires more than just romantic love from them. Calvus's loneliness was cured after meeting Glora, being with Glora, while Castor's lust will never be satisfied. So that's the difference between these two. So chapter 1 begins with King Castor making his first command as the king. He orders his servants to go out to the city and to bring women to him before the throne. The guards have to obey him, of course, albeit with much hesitation. So eventually, after doing this, and he commands them to go out into the city, eventually 48 women, who are from the richer areas of the city, are brought into the throne room, and when King Castor states his purpose for bringing them to the palace, one of the women replies, "Your Highness, we are honored to be in such a position, but we wish to return to our homes. Like, please let us go." Then I questioned her motive to return home, and another responded, "We are honored to be noticed by you, our king. However, we do not wish to marry you. Besides this, one of us has a husband waiting for her at home. Also, we do not find ourselves attracted enough to you." Then a feeling of shame washed over me, and I clenched my fists. Then we see Castor's unwillingness to admit he is wrong after this. My servant turned and said to me, "My lord, it would be wise for you to send these women back to their homes. What you have requested is not something you can achieve with forceful command." Obviously. I rested my forehead upon the palm of my hand, and I said to my servant, "You would have my soul condemned to hell, then." "I mean not to judge you, my lord," he said, but kind of does. Then I said unto my servants, who had brought the women to me, "Very well, you may return them to their homes. I don't know why I ever expected something to happen in the first place." I took a deep sigh. What a drama king, literally. So then Castor, after this ordeal, Castor decides to travel throughout the rest of chapter 1. He decides to travel all the way to the land of Verdal to find himself a wife and a queen. So he travels all the way from here in Empyria, the kingdom, and he goes all the way down to the mountains of Granera, all the way to, by this point when I drew this is later in history, it's called New Elvok. Spoiler alert, but you'll see why in future videos. But for now, well, in the next video, in the Rise of Pollux, but for now, it's called Elvok, not New Elvok yet. So this is about where Elvok is, and yes, that's a star, supposed to be. So this is where Elvok is in relation to Empyria, so he goes south. Now, along the trip, they stop by the town of Benna in Granera for a night before continuing the next day, because their horses need food, water and all that stuff, and energy refilling, like a pit stop for their horses, and then his men also need to rest. So they stay in Benna for a night, which is a town around here in Granera, and then they continue the next day. And then they finally reach the city of Elvok in the land of Verdal. So this is the land of Verdal, and this is Elvok. And the city of Elvok is built with something unique, so we'll get into it. Let me read it. The city of Elvok was built with much Bazan stone, a rock found in the basin of Emek, and it is the same material that was used by Auden and Adia when they built their house. This was something that impressed me as we approached the city. So Auden and Adia are, the first man and women of all human history, if you recall. You should always remember that. So Elvok is said to be built with the same materials as the city which Auden and Adia built in Emek at the beginning of the Primitive Age. So here's kind of what Bazan stone looks like. It's not like a mineral, like a crystal, like gold or the shiny stuff. So this isn't really accurate. It's more like a rock. It's just a colored rock. But the color of the rock and the material of the rock is seen as rare and special because of its consistency and its strength. What's the word? It's like unbreakability, whatever you call it. So this is like kind of what Bazan stone looks like palette wise. This is closer in its texture than this, because this looks more like a jewel, like a mineral, but but it's actually supposed to just be a stone, like rock, just pure rock. So this is boson stone. Okay, why is it hovering over a tree bark? I don't know. Blame AI art. AI is weird. So, continuing. Now, the city of Elvok has in it a large bazaar area, which is in a building of its own. So it's an indoor bazaar, not an outdoor one. It is called the Ossuarium, and most of the citizens there roam about shopping. Many of the townsfolk in the surrounding area of Verdal come to Elvok just to tour the Ossuarium. That was the place I decided to search for a wife. So it's like a center for a lot of people. So basically the Ossuarium is a fantasy mall. It's a mall, basically. And I tried generating some images to depict what its vibe is. Let's see here. Let's examine these. So they all get it right, obviously, because I described it. They have like the top that has skylights and stuff, but it's all indoors. It's kind of like a mall, so it has a lot of shops inside. This is a little too. It's got too much grass. I mean, plant life. So does this. So it wouldn't be like, it's not run down like that. This is closer. Nope. It also has the. Yeah, you can see the plants here for some reason. So there's elements in all of these that are accurate to it, but not one of them has all of it right, if that makes sense. And the ossuarium, I couldn't get it to generate an image from outside, like what the building looks like from the outside. The architecture, it's too difficult to explain accurately, and to get the AI art generator to do it right. So instead, I'll just explain it myself. The ossuarium, from the outside, it's like a dome shape, with like so okay, picture a ring, and then inside of the ring it's a dome shape, and the dome shape is where all the skylights are. And then the ring around it are like the entrances and the gates into the ossuarium. So, and it's near the center of the city of Elvok. So there's a city around it outside. So it's a fantasy mall. Got it? Cool. So, the first woman, Castor, approaches in the ossuarium to ask to come back with him is a Sonoan girl. So she's from Sonoa. Where is Sonoa, you ask? Can't remember. This is the land of Sonoa. Okay. So, goes down to Elvok. He meets a woman from Sonoa. Okay. Most likely Phacelia, the capital, because in the surrounding towns, because most people don't live out here. Maybe like tribal people, but that's it. Yeah, here we are. So he meets a Sonoan girl, and he can tell she's from Sonoa because of her ethnicity and her attire. So let me show a little. These are a couple images to try generating of what the interaction would look like. Of course, these are both inaccurate because they're open to the sky. The ossuarium does not look like this, and it does, and it's indoors, 100%, like this. So picture them in a building in a place like this. Okay, got it. Cool. This is supposed to be Nera, the Sonoan girl he meets. Chapter 1 ends with Castor having 0 luck and being accepted by any woman he approaches. So this girl, Nera, she rejects him, of course. And so that's how Chapter 1 ends. 0 luck. This leads him, however, to continue his This leads him to continue his journey southward. So he continues on in Chapter 2, trying to do this. Going to cities, trying to pick up ladies, basically. He's a creep. So Castor and his men reach the Savir marshlands. So they continue southward from Elvok. He leaves. Okay, this didn't work. Rejection, nothing happened. Okay, continue southward to the Savir. So again, this is the Savir marsh. These are the Savir marshlands, here and here. And you see the Savir marshlands flow into the waterfalls that surround Emek, the Great Basin. But these are the Savir marshlands, and then this is the Savir River, okay? And they travel to the Savir River. They cross it after spending a night in the marshlands here. And then they come over here to the marshlands of Ivanhara. And then from there, they go down to this town, this city, called Nevai. And on the way there, travel through muddy roads until they reach the elven city of Nevai. Since Castor can't read Elvish, he has a servant who's traveling with them who can actually translate the signs for him to help him follow the right roads to Nevi, because it's like a kind of bumpy, muddy roads. And he's got like this royal chariot he's been bringing down, and yeah, they boarded a boat that's big enough to carry his chariot. Don't worry about it. And he's going all this. He's very proud. He likes having all his royal stuff always with him. He didn't need to bring his royal chariot all the way from Ultira, but he chose to. He's kind of a nuisance. Moving on. So yeah, so they go to Nevi. Moving on. Then I began to speak to the crowd in Nevi. So this is now they're in the city of Nevi. It's an elven city. I began to speak to the crowd, saying, I am King Castor of Ultira, and I come in peace. So at first they all thought Ultirans are there to bring war, because it's the Great War still. So, but he goes out to the center of the crowd and he says, I am King Castor of Ultira, and I come in peace. I have come in search of my queen, for I have not yet found her, and I know she must be out there somewhere. Will I find her here? Spoiler alert, no. So we see how embarrassingly dramatic Castor's rhetoric can be. He often writes things in this book that show how like over the top and sappy he is. He is very emotionally immature. So at first, in this endeavor, at the start of chapter 2, no woman accepts him again, just like in Elvok. So he has his guards go out and do the work for him while he sits and kind of waits in his royal chariot. But then, actually, finally, 2 women are brought to him. And they're both elves. The first elf woman who comes to meet him is Veliel. And here's what he writes about this. Then I beseeched her, Veliel, the elf, tell me, would you be willing to return to my kingdom with me? You could become the queen of Ultira. If not, tell me what I have done wrong. And Veliel replied, I apologize, Highness, but I am not willing to go with you. I have grown up here since I was a young girl, since I was taken from my home in Ahana. He's like, okay, I didn't ask for a sob story. This city is part of my very soul, and I would never leave it behind. Then I said, very well, then you may go. Next is an elf named Telby, and after introducing herself to him, he says, and I said, will you reject my offer as well? If you would come with me to my kingdom, you would be rich beyond comparison. For behold, the palace of Ultira is filled with much wealth. I mean, everyone knows this. And you would be treated well. Sure. You would be the queen of Ultira. Think about that. If you would also reject me, then tell me what I have done wrong. And Telby said, I find your countenance to be fair, true. However, and I interceded, saying, however, what more do you need, then, for me to be fair? He's very vain. She continued, saying, no woman would go with any man, no matter how much gold or silver he has, nor how handsome he is, if they do not know him with their whole heart first. If you seek to find yourself a wife, then seek elsewhere, anywhere but the land of the elves. For we elves esteem ourselves for not lowering our thoughts and behavior to that of the humans. So it's kind of racially charged there. With those words, I gave up on searching outside of Ultira for a wife. I said to Telby, then you may leave as well. So after that, Castor gives up and returns to Ultira the same way he came. And we see in his writing in the book how much of a crybaby he is, as you've already seen. He is quite literally a drama king. The journey from Verdal to Ultira was a long and strenuous one, and my pillow in the chariot became wet with tears. Wow. The longer I dwelt on my sorrow and loneliness, the more I could feel a subtle rage boil up from within. My body was trembling, and my nerves were dancing underneath my skin, the lamentations of my heart overflowing. Drama King. Then he writes this in his diary, which is separate from his main royal journal, which would become this book, obviously, as we see. But this is what he wrote in his diary later. This loneliness is the bane of my life. I came to the throne hoping my name would be renowned, and that a woman could finally fall in love with me. But now I see how wrong that assumption was. How wrong I was to assume that fame and wealth alone would make me easier to love. But I'm not easy to love, am I? The elves think lowly of me, but so do the Humes. Not only did Nevi, a city of elves, reject me, but Elvok, a city of common people. This pain tempts me to end my life. Whoa there. But I shall keep going a little further to hold on to any last hope that I may find the one to stay by my side on the throne forever. Yikes. Nevertheless, I still find it difficult to have hope. Yes, it is very hopeless indeed. How can I find her? Is it even in the realm of possibility? I think not. If common women cannot view me with longing eyes, how then could anyone love me? Woe is me, oh woe is me, for I am ceaselessly in pain and agony in the blackness of this unfair solitude. Is it unfair, my guy? Now, after he places his diary book in his drawer, he falls asleep and has this demonic nightmare that torments him, as he says later. But then he awakes, and something very strange happens. Let's read this. Then, after I had awoken from that nightmare, I heard a voice, like a woman's, say to me from the balcony outside the window, Why are you striving? Why are you striving after these things? Why do you worship pleasure rather than the light? Remember the light, and remember the one who sits enthroned. That would be Toniel, the precursor of the light, from Empyria. But when I looked over at the balcony, I only saw a flash of light as it flew upward. Now, needless to say, he does not apply this wisdom to his life. And also needless to say, this is an angel. It's inferred it's an angel, but he's just writing. He's not thinking about all this stuff. Now, later, while sitting on his throne, multiple guards come before Castor to ask what duties he would have for them that day. Instead, Castor doesn't say anything to them. He simply stands up from the throne, and he gestures to them to follow him to the room behind the throne room. Inside that room, there's a large map of the lands of Ardon on the wall. And then he writes, Now my heart was burning with indignation, and I sought to destroy a city. Just a city, any city. The destruction of any city would satiate my bloodlust, so I cared not which city I picked from the map. With gritted teeth, I sternly stated, Whichever city my finger lands on, that city will be brought to dust under my strong hand. So, he places his finger on the map on the wall in the room, and he just kind of randomly moves it around then he closes his eyes, looks away from it, until he randomly decides to stop on a random city. And where his finger stops is on a city called Hethar, right here, in the land of Sedima. This is a desert land, so it's like desert vibes kind of thing. And this is where Chapter 3 begins. Chapter 3 now begins. King Castor has his army gathered together to board the dreadnought Medela, the same ship Calvus used to destroy the city of Hesbon in Syria in Book 6, Chapter 12. So this is, again, same pictures from that time. The chapter starts off with their flight across the sea to the western continent. Fly from Empyria, and they go all the way this way until they get here. So this is their route. And so the chapter starts off with their flight, and then their ambush of Hethar at nighttime, where he himself, Castor, joins the attack with his claymore drawn, and he has his Aeons burn down all of Hethar's ships, so that they can't escape to the sea this way. They can't escape. So they land here, and they do destroy all of Hethar's ships. And the Old Tyrian army bulldozes basically through the gates and walls of the city, causing the quote-unquote army, you could call it, of Hethar to cower in fear. They don't have much of an army. Now, the city of Hethar was a fairly rich little city in the desert, which is a fact that somehow fueled Castor's joy in utterly rampaging it. So, yeah, he's like, you guys think you're so rich? You think you guys are all that? Well, goodbye. Now, let's continue. Once we had entered through the city gates of Hethar, I sent a squad of soldiers to raid the palace courtyard of King Jehesu. Jehesu was known for his cowardice, and would always avoid conflict with other nations for fear of battle. But I had brought the war to him now, and he could not escape. As we wrought destruction upon the city near the bay, some of the citizens of the city fled to the desert outside the gates toward the west, while some others stayed hidden in their homes, holding on to their possessions. Here comes a cough. Sorry. Just clear my throat. Now, Castor, after this, makes his way all the way over to King Jehesu's palace, and he sneaks inside. Continuing there. Jehesu had a great curtain covering his doorway, and it was dyed with royal purple dyes, which are very rich, by the way. Also, on either side of it were palm trees planted in clay vases dipped in gold. Or garnished in gold? I don't know. Varnished in gold, you could say. Indeed, the city of Hethar, like many cities in the land of Sedima, was wealthy in regards to gold. Sedima has a lot of gold. But now I would take it all from them, and it made my heart glad. Wow, buddy. When Castor enters Jehesu's chamber, he finds him cowering in fear in the far left corner by the window. And he makes fun of Jehesu before killing him by slitting his throat. So he makes fun of Jehesu cowering in his corner by the window, slits his throat after making fun of him. Yeah. Then I said to him, well, this is before that. Then I said to him, "You have great amounts of gold in your city, do you not?" "I can see it. I see gold in every corner of this humble city. And thanks to your army's humble size, I was indeed able to make it past them to reach you. Your servants and family will die along with you tonight." And then he kills him. So, after Castor kills him, and then every other person in the palace, as he's leaving the palace, he kind of just wipes them all out. He also, Ultira, wipes out, well, his army wipes out the rest of the city successfully. So Hethar is destroyed. And then they return to Ultira. Now, when they return to Ultira, Castor is confronted. Now, when I began preparing myself for rest that night, a servant of the palace came to speak with me. He said, "What did destroying the city of Hethar accomplish for this kingdom? Your father stood against Calvis from the beginning, even before he used his bloodlust against him, and you supported your father in this. Yet here you stand, relishing in the same bloodlust." I did not dwell on what he said, because of course not, and anger rushed into my heart. Oh, my throat is burning already? No. Halfway done. And I replied to him, saying, "Begone! Out of my sight. I desire to slumber tonight. I will not have your words of judgment nagging at me, keeping me awake." So, the trend of Castor being rebuked for his loneliness, for his foolishness, and then him showing more foolishness by rejecting sound advice and wisdom, continues. Into Chapter 4. So Chapter 4 starts off with Castor saying that it has been many days since he last wrote in his royal journal. So between Chapter 3 and 4 of his journal entries, there's been a big time lapse. Maybe a couple months, a few months, who knows. And it's followed by him then mentioning how depressed he's been since people in the palace have started confronting him about his character more often lately. So he doesn't like that. Now, while mulling over his loneliness yet again, it drives him to seek out a trusted servant of his, a trusted servant of his in the palace, a man named Eind. And Castor asks Eind the following: "I know of your learnedness in the studies of Aresta and the Rift Plains." Sorry. "I also know that you have had many journeys and adventures on the other worlds. And you know that I have been looking for a queen for myself. Hence, I ask if you know of any country or land on any rift plane where there may be a damsel who could love me." Maybe Ein's thinking to himself, "I don't know, bud. You're hopeless, bud. You don't deserve that anyway. If not, which is doubtful." How could he say that at this point? "Then tell me where I could begin." So he's really hopeless, but he also has stupid pride. So he's like, which is doubtful. How could he say that? So Eind responds to this question, this command, by telling Castor about the legends of the Fairy of the Lake, which, in Book 2, the Book of Primitus. I believe it was in part 1 of part 1 video of the Book of Primitus. No, it's book 2 or 3. Yeah, it's book 3. I'm sorry, part 3 of book 2, the video. Video part 3 of book 2 of the Book of Primitus. There we go. I believe it's in that video where I introduced you all to how the peoples were dispersed after death entered the world, after the Shadowfall. They were raptured to the Rift Plains, and the fairies who were raptured to the Rift Plane Calliska, one of those fairies became very powerful through soaking in the Gaia energy of the land. And then she became known later on as the Fairy of the Lake. Well, now we're going to see her here. So that's what Eind is talking about when he refers to this Fairy of the Lake. And he tells Castor about the legends of the Fairy of the Lake on the Rift Plane Calliska, stating that the lake this fairy dwells in is called Lacridoria, a lake surrounded on all its sides by a great fairy town. Now, Lacridoria is the name of both the Fairy of the Lake and the lake, and the city. So the lake that she's in and the city around it is all named after her, the Fairy of the Lake, and her name is Lacridoria. So when you just say Lacridoria, you can be referring to either the Fairy of the Lake herself, the lake she's in, or the fairy city built around the lake. Eind explains to Castor that this Fairy of the Lake, Lacridoria, can be summoned from the lake by those deemed worthy, so that she may grant them their wish. So she's a wish-granting fairy. Though Castor doubts what he's saying about this legend, he nonetheless humors it and chooses to go just in case the legends are true. He wants to go just in case, out of sheer desperation at this point. Alright, now we got some reading to do. Before leaving his room, I said, Ein's room, if I am correct in saying this, there are not many rift gates which connect to Calliska. Well, what he means is there's not a lot of rift gates that have rift crystals in them, like in public spaces where you can pay for the toll to go to a rift gate, go to a rift plane. Most rift gates don't have rift crystals that have a connection to the rift plane of Calliska. It's rare. Make for me a rift gate to Calliska by the end of tomorrow. I know you can do this. You may search the vault to find the right rift crystals. I also hear there are no rift ships designed or equipped with the proper rift crystals to fly to Calliska. He said, it will be done. With that, I returned to my chamber to rest. The next evening, Eind had a rift gate prepared for me in the palace basement. The gate was embellished with Calliscan rift crystals, so that its portal would open to Calliska. Then Eind said to me before the rift gate, you should ask some of your most experienced alchemists of the royal house to come and adjust the portal, because if you go in through it at this moment, you do not know what gate you may come out of when you arrive there. So I did as he suggested, and I called So I did as he suggested, and I called for 4 of my alchemists who were skilled in rift studies. Once the gate was prepared, I went through. I had left the council to be in charge while I was absent. Now, let me explain this. So when it says, when he writes that, where was it? When Eind says, because if you go in through it at this moment, you do not know what gate you may come out of. Remember, a rift portal needs a corresponding rift gate, and the rift gate has to be have the right engravings and symbols on it that kind of code that let the rift portal energy know which portal on the other end to connect to in that pocket dimension of the rift plane. Otherwise, if it doesn't have a specified place, it could be either a random portal that it connects to just by chance, or if there's no rift gate, which usually is not the case on any rift plane, but if a rift plane were to not have a rift gate, then if you just go through any rift gate with on your end without specified coordinates to a connecting rift gate, then you would literally just appear somewhere random in the rift plane, and you could be hundreds or thousands of miles away from any civilization. So that's why he says that. Okay, here's Calliska. The best image I could find that looks similar to the landscape of Calliska. This is really accurate to Calliska, which is amazing because of how unique Calliska is. So, in a sense, when I found this image way back in middle school, I remember feeling like, man, like. Like, I liked that I found something that looked so similar to Calliska, but I also didn't like that something I thought was original in my mind wasn't as original. But part of, making your own fantasy world is you just gotta get used to it. And it doesn't matter how original something is anymore. It's satisfying when something really is original and you find out that it is, but it's not what it's about anymore. But as a kid in middle school, I was like kind of like, man, I don't like that. I don't know how I feel about that. But so this is a really good representation of Calliska's vibe and appearance. The whole world is like this, basically. But of course, it's missing also lakes. There's a lot of lakes in Calliska, and then a lot of stuff glows in the dark at night. There's a lot of bioluminescence on the world of Calliska. So anyway, moving on. Oh, this is also another image I found that kind of depicts like what the life on Calliska is like. The animals and ecosystems, ecology. The ecology of Calliska has a lot of like weird alien-looking, fantastical, mythical-looking creatures. This kind of dragon would be something that you would see on Calliska. So, and I don't know about this horse. I don't think there's many horses in Calliska. It'd be more weird looking than that. But this should give you a good idea, an image in your head to imagine as we go to Calliska now. So here we go. Arriving on the rift plain Calliska, I found myself standing before a strange mountain. But this landmass, so when he says strange mountain, picture something like this, okay? He's like, it's not a mountain, but it's strange, so I'll just call it a strange mountain. It's not really a mountain, but I don't know what else to call it. But this landmass was not sculpted in a natural manner. At least not a seemingly natural manner, obviously. And strange plants and thorny trees were growing from its sides. Under the opening of the curved mountain was a great entrance, which was the entrance to the road which led to the city of the lake of Lacridoria. So Castor arrives on Calliska, and he meets a fairy named Windell when he goes down to this entrance. Windell, she's a fairy with like red eyes, silver hair, a large red ribbon in her hair. He describes her appearance, and she has blue wings, which are outlined with like a red hue. Now I have tried generating images of her. They're not 100% accurate. Ignore the backgrounds. This is not at all in my world, okay? That's just generic fantasy town, whatever. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, that was me trying to... That's spoiler alert. You'll see that image soon. So this is the world that she's in. Just remember, this should be more accurate in the background, okay? This should be a more accurate background for her. So this is kind of not Noelle, that's her sister. This is Windell's appearance. So Windell introduces herself by explaining that she is the keeper of the city of Lacridoria, and Castor tells her that he's there to see the fairy of the lake, to grant his wish of having a queen. Windell then has another fairy escort him down to the city, and to stay in an inn before he will be taken on a ferry to the lake. Not a ferry, but a ferry, like a boat. I couldn't generate images of the city, unfortunately. But I'll just read. I didn't put it here, but here's a description from him when he goes into the city. As I entered the city itself, I began to feel very small, as though I weren't a king. He doesn't like that. There were fairies standing on the tops of trees and buildings, and fireflies filled the air like a warm fog. So there's tons of fireflies. So again, picture of this kind of land with a lot of fireflies, like a fog. Now this is the rift plain where most of the fairies live. Alright, now, as I slept that night in the inn, I began to suspect that the fairies throughout the city, who stared at me before, knew why I was there. I barely slept that night, with paranoid thoughts swimming in my mind, though the atmosphere of the city was like a warm blanket. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of flutes playing outside the window, and the fireflies, which were golden at night, were purple in the morning. So Castor, although acknowledging that the atmosphere of the fairy city is actually very comforting and pleasant, it also shows that he still has some semblance of conscience, because he's feeling convicted by being surrounded by countless pure fairies. Fairies are known for their purity and their wisdom and their gentleness, so he's like feeling this sense of like guilt and shame and like unease around them. So Castor leaves the inn the next morning, and he goes down to the lakeside house where Windell awaits him by the ferry, the boat. And Wendell also introduces him to her twin sister, Noelle. Noelle is her twin sister, so she looks similar, just like this, basically. Now, after climbing aboard... Oh, sorry. After climbing aboard and leaving the dock, Noelle handed me a ruby jewel, saying, "This token will summon her, Mistress Lacridoria, from under the lake. Take heed that you have a pure heart before speaking to her." Ooh, do we think that's the case for Castor, that he has a pure heart? So reaching the center of the lake, where it's like in the center of the lake? In the center of this lake, it's shallow enough for him to stand in. Okay, and Noelle drops Castor off, and then she departs on the boat. And she departs stating that she's unworthy to be in Lady Lacridoria's presence. So, if a fairy of pure heart, such as her, feels that way, even if it's unfounded, then Castor, an impure hume here, he should definitely be questioning some things about himself. But, you know, he's not. He's not concerned. So, here's the image you saw, spoiler of earlier. So, based on the description of her in the book, I tried generating images. It took a while, but these are the best ones I could get it to generate. Castor does not have a beard. Okay, so these two are more accurate. This is the most accurate image with Castor in it. This is not, and this is not because he's not wearing that kind of crown, and he's not wearing that kind of clothing. This is closer clothing. So yeah, and then let's see here. Lady Lacridoria. Between these three, outfit-wise, this is the most accurate. It's not this sus. It's not. Her outfit is not like that. This one looks cooler, but it's not as detailed as this. It's like a plain robe in actuality. And then her face, I'd say this face is the closest to Lacridoria. Hair, I'd say this hair is the closest. So this picture is the most close. Sorry, this picture is the most accurate in terms of her robe and her hair. This one is most accurate in terms of her ears and her height. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Height. And then this one is the most accurate in terms of her wings. So these wings, this hair, and also her eyes are more like that. Her face, sorry. This is the most accurate in terms of her face. Okay, and her height. So face and height, robes and hair, oh, and ears, and then wings. Okay, these wings, this hair and robe, and then this face and height. Got it? Cool. And then this is the most accurate of Castor. So we got this image now. Alright. After standing there in the quietness of the still waters, and in the calm mist, I lifted the jewel. Once I lifted it, it began to radiate with a purple light, and the fog cleared from the lake. The water before me began to bubble and turn bright, before the fairy of the lake emerged from under it. Now she stood before me, and her body was clothed in a soaked lavender robe. She was about 7 feet tall, her blonde hair could reach her knees, her wings were bright pink. When she opened her eyes, bright purple lights shone out of them. Then she spoke unto me, saying, "Castor, son of Peluvius, and king of Empyria, why have you come to see me?" I said to her, "I have heard of your ability to grant wishes from one of my servants. For many years I have been struggling with a painful loneliness, and I have sought after love, and yet I have found nothing. I beg of you, let me find love. I would ask that you grant my wish, that the women of Empyria would desire me when I return." Oh, so not just a queen, right? Not just a wife, but the women, not a woman. Oh boy, this guy. After I said this, Lacridoria responded, looking down at me with a sorrowful countenance. "I see that the darkness is in your soul, and that it is overcoming your heart. I cannot grant a wish distorted by evil desires, which originate in the darkness." So I replied, saying, "No, my lady, let it not be so. I beseech you in all earnestness. Let this pain leave me." Lacridoria then said, "Truly you are a man who has grown to know nothing of poverty or loss, yet here you stand before me, groveling in the water for that which you want. Yet I shall grant you your wish. Kind of a fib. Return to your kingdom and receive what is due. That's not a fib. And I said, if it is true, then you have my highest gratitude. After I said this, she closed her eyes, and she began to descend into the lake. Just kidding. Doesn't make that sound. She descends into the lake. So, now the fairies had overheard all this that she's saying, and that he said, and they proceed to bring Castor back to the entrance of the city, and he returns to the Old Tyrian Palace through the rift gate which he came. Thus ends chapter 4. Now, okay, chapter 5 is actually not, and this is the final chapter, okay, almost done. Chapter 5 is actually not a journal entry from King Castor, but it's rather from his younger, more humble and wise brother, Pollux. This is the same as it was for chapter 14 of the Fall of Calvis. It's the same for this book. The last chapter, chapter 5 of Castor, is actually written by Pollux too. So because Castor could not have written about his own downfall and death, this chapter is written by an outside observer in the third person who witnessed the event, that being Pollux. So that's what this chapter is. Although I'm sure you can tell by now that Castor's fall to the darkness might be a bit more extreme and blatant than Calvis's fall. Alright? Less gray areas. This is pretty much black. No white or gray areas, black area. Pollux states in the opening of chapter 5 why he wrote it and added it onto Castor's official royal journal, just like he did with Calvis's. And of course, these royal journals have traditionally always been recorded and kept in the Old Tyrian Palace library. And this one would have been thrown away, like I'm pretty sure Old Tyrians wouldn't want King Castor's journal entries in the palace library. But it is there because of this last chapter that Pollux adds, and it's to show the consequences of falling to the darkness, even if you're royalty. So, basically, Pollux says that as soon as King Castor returned to the kingdom from his sad endeavor, as he quoting from Pollux, he calls it a sad endeavor, to Lacridoria, Castor then becomes exceedingly lazy. Quoting some rumors, Pollux quotes some rumors of this from servants of the palace. One of the rumors says, "Oh, he has become so unkempt and filthy, and he stays in bed till noon sometimes." So Castor he's a wreck, man. Castor begins complaining about his duties as king, even imprisoning his servant Eind for assuming he had been lied to about the Fairy of the Lake, because his wish seemingly wasn't granted. But remember, she did say this: return to your kingdom and receive what is due. What is due. So he's getting what he deserves eventually. Yeah. So finally, Pollux goes to the palace throne room, and he goes to check on his brother Castor. But when Pollux arrives, he finds Castor literally circling a crowd of women. He had, seemingly with force, you would think, brought into the palace, and he's trying to persuade these women to come into his chamber. And Pollux tries approaching and rebuking him. This is what Pollux says: "My brother, why are you doing this? Can you not see that they are uncomfortable in your presence?" Then Castor, responded, "Who goes there? Did I let you in my house?" Then I said, "If you see this as your house alone, then you have been blinded by your entitlement." Castor replied, "Are you my judge? I was born before you, and you are my younger brother. Do not concern yourself with my personal matters. If you have a problem with what I am doing, then you may take it to the council. Are they not responsible for the king's actions?" And I said, "The king is responsible for his own actions." I continued saying, "Whether or not I am older or younger than you, it is my duty to take care of my family. And for so many years I have seen you flirting with the darkness, and you have never shown any care to change your ways. Have you not read the scrolls in the palace library? Have you not read, Book 3, have you not read the workings of Sintha? And do you not understand how following the darkness will lead you to your doom?" Castor then replied, saying, "You have always been like this, Pollux. You were always the favorite of mothers, too. It must be a blessing to live a life of peace and blissfulness, ignorant to the painfulness of life." And as he began to raise his voice, the women looked at me with a look that begged for me to free them. I then said to Castor, "Do you no longer hold on to reason then, brother?" And he said, "Reason? What need have I of reason? What is reason? I do not know." Clearly. Now I said to the woman, "You are not enslaved to this man. Come to me, and I will lead you out of the palace." But Castor said, "They will do no such thing. I have paid for them myself. I say who goes and who stays, for this is my house." So now we see from an outside perspective how much he's fallen, how far he's fallen. So after this, Pollux swears to return for the women to rescue them. He goes off to the council, but when Pollux brings what is happening before the council, Aranotha responds with this: "Let him do as he pleases, for he is the king. What good will it do for you bringing up the Fraser name here? That name has been defiled by Calvis, so they still hate Calvis. But they're okay with Castor." Interesting. Then I said, attempting to keep my voice soft, "Will you speak nothing of the king owning concubines? Am I going mad, or is the council losing its sense of right and wrong? For you caused the true heir of the throne to exile to Pyra, while you allow a man like Castor to keep the throne. I cannot stand for this." Aranotha did not respond for a moment. However, I could see the look of disdain on his face. I could see how the beast was influencing the hearts of those in the council. And since I could not gain the support of the council, I decided to free the concubines from Castor's clutch myself, even if it's dangerous, and if it's his own brother. I left the council before things turned for the worse. This is not good, Emil. I can't talk. This is not good stuff. So, we are reminded here, by Pollux, of the ultimate cause for all this evil in the hearts of nations, and those who rule over them. It's the beast, Infernos. So, Pollux takes his sword with him to the throne room, and not finding him there, his brother Castor, he doesn't find him there. Pollux realizes he probably already took them with him to his chamber up in the tower. He's like, uh-oh. So Pollux rushes up the stairs till he reaches the doors of the king's royal chamber. He pounds on the doors, and he hears nothing, but he keeps pounding, and once he hears a woman's voice from inside, and he realizes this is, I can't be waiting, I can't just keep pounding, he's going to use his sword. So, this is what he hears the women inside saying: "Let us alone, or we will die." After hearing that, I unsheathed my blade and stuck it in the crevice of the doors. I pulled the blade upwards to cut loose the locking chain, and I kicked the doors open. Once inside, I almost fainted from the wretched sight before me. I just had some maratang, so I had to burp a little bit. Castor was lying in his bed, and 5 women were bound by ropes beside him, and he was holding a dagger in his hands. The implication is enough, but what's he planning on doing here, huh? What's he planning? Before his blade could fall, I jumped on the bed and cut the ropes binding the concubines. I shouted, "Run free!" And Castor screamed, saying, "No, they must stay, I need them." And his voice sounded inhuman, as if some demon had taken up residence in his body. I put my blade up against his throat, then said, "Who are you? Are you a brother of mine? What it is you have done is beyond my comprehension." And I couldn't help but grit my teeth when speaking to him. I no longer saw my brother in those eyes, but the eyes of a monster stared back at me. My voice could no longer reach him. He screamed, then grabbed my blade, and he paid no mind to the blood which gushed out of his hand. He pushed my blade aside and jumped off the bed to escape the chamber. Now, for the rest of this video, I'm just going to read the remaining text of the final chapter of the book 7, The Fall of Castor. So, we got some reading to do. After Castor had run out of the palace, he had taken a potsherd, with which he began to cut himself. He ran out into the center of the bazaar area of the city, where there are always great crowds of people, and he began growling and screaming, and his body seemed to contort and bend, literally. His veins were black and blue, and the color of his eyes faded. Stressful situation, you might say. Wow, how did I lose my place? Okay. So, and he began growling and screaming, and his body seemed to contort and bend. His veins were black and blue, and the color of his eyes faded. So the darkness literally kills you here, at this point. After he fell to the ground, growling and screaming, his skin turned black like ink, and he breathed his last. Now, the darkness, if it's in you so much, it can literally go into your body, just like arc light comes from an Aeon soul. So the darkness, if it's permeating your soul, it can ooze out into your body too. Involuntarily or voluntarily, right? So, but that's not actually what's going on here. That's part of the process, but that's not the main part of the process here. What's happening here is Castor, when he stood before Lacridoria said, "Oh, receive what is due when you return to your kingdom." This is what she's talking about. So she's known for granting wishes. But since King Castor didn't have a pure heart going before her, and and he asked for something impure. Instead, hold on, I just got a message. I have to respond to this right now, actually. Sorry. Almost done. And good. Okay. So, what was I saying? So, what's going on here, basically, is when Castor stood before Lady Lacridoria and asked for her to grant his wish for a queen, a wife, and, well, actually, for all the women of Empyria to find him attractive, basically. When he did that, and when she said, receive what is due, she didn't grant his wish, but she did use the same power that she uses to grant wishes. So the legends are true about her. She has this power to grant wishes, but this time she uses the same power to not grant a wish, but to give him what he deserves instead of granting what he wants. And so she actually is the one behind this. The quote-unquote wish she granted was for him to receive the penalty of his evil by having the darkness be the end of him. Literally, the end of him. So the darkness literally physically kills him here. Coming out of his own soul into his physical body. And that's how King Castor dies. All the people who were panicking in the streets finally calmed down when he had stopped moving. The crowds... I was going to say the cows. The crowds gathered around him to see who he was. This isn't a laughing matter. But they kept some distance because they were afraid. Seeing a dead body is scary. Parents covered their children's eyes, and many others were weeping. The crowd then reorganized themselves to open a path for the royal guards who had been chasing after Castor from the palace. When they saw his body, well, they immediately know he's gone. They pointed their swords to the ground and bowed their heads. After they said a short word of prayer to Toniel, they circled around his body and picked it up. Though it was hard for me to see his body in such a state, and his soul absent from it, it was harder knowing where his spirit had now gone. He will never know any rest. So, Pollux, he's lost his dad, and his dad wasn't that great. Now he's lost his older brother to his own evil. And so Pollux he's got it rough, but he doesn't ever follow the darkness. He follows the light very well his whole life, as we'll see in the next video, the rise of Pollux. So he's mourning here, not just that his brother's dead, but that him and also his father, we can infer, are having no rest. They're burning forever in Hilvan because of their actions. So, yeah. Alright, 2 slides left. After the royal house had finished preparing the funeral for Castor, the council made known to the people that the man who had died was indeed the king. So, yep, that body you saw, that person who was contorting and bending and died, that was actually your king. That's Castor. Yep, it's true. And the people began to protest against having a mourning ceremony for him. Like the last time we saw one was with King Ankazar in chapter 3 of book 6, but they were going to prepare one for him, but they protest against it. For they said, a man such as he deserves no mourning. I would agree. Even Calvus was better than this man. The following days were taxing on my soul. During all the coronation events and meetings of the council, the grief in my heart never ceased. Nonetheless, I was faced with the weight of the crown. I do not care enough to write concerning my coronation ceremony. All I will say is that I did not deserve the amount of praise I received. I did not know so many knew my name. I am writing this now in my royal chamber, the same room where I witnessed my elder brother defile his soul. So Pollux mentions here about his coronation. So we obviously know now Pollux has been crowned as the new king of Empyria to replace Castor, his brother. And this is the last couple sentences of the entire book. Now I have learned something new, that the heart well acquainted with grief is greatly humbled. The humbled heart grows in wisdom, and in wisdom the soul prospers. So, Pollux learned a lot from this, but he had to learn a lot through a lot of darkness and evil. And there we have it. That's book 7, The Fall of Castor. It's only a 5-chapter book. It's shorter than book 6, but this video might still be kind of long. I don't know. I don't have a timer. So, we'll see you in the next video, where we're going to go through book 8, The Rise of Pollux, Castor's younger brother, who's now king of Empyria. And book 8 will be the last video chronicling these kings, ever since book 5, really. So, see you then.